morning, everybody. This interview today is with one of the most talented and well-known piano players in the jazz scene in Australia, Peter McKay. Peter, welcome.
Thanks, Mel. Pleased to be here at this august organisation.
Well, in this series, what we've tried to do is capture a little bit of the story of people who have been in the jazz scene in Australia for many years, and you certainly fit the bill for that situation to do it. So let's start back at the beginning. Tell us a little bit about where you grew up.
I grew up to age 12 in Ormond. Then we moved to North Caulfield, and there's a reason for that. I did a lot of singing in church choirs when I was a kid, and I started at 6 in Ormond at Christchurch, and then moved to St Mary's Caulfield, and via that had a music scholarship to Caulfield Grammar. So that, we lived in North Caulfield then, which was great because I could walk to school.
Yeah.
And it was such a lucky thing in a lot of ways, if I can expound on that just a little bit, because the director of music at Caulfield Grammar was a guy who had profound influence on, me musically, I think, for the rest of my life. Was a very well-known actor and wonderful organist and pianist by the name of McKay. Norman would be known to people for films like Man of Flowers, which I think he won the Australian Awards for. But the guy was a great bloke, and he was he had associated the Royal College of Music, ARCO, RCM music, and won the Prix de Muse France. This is not as an actor, this is an organist, amazing musician, and he was tremendously helpful and tremendously encouraging.
Yes.
And he's, I guess, one of the two people who had the most influence on me musically.
In your life. Well, what about your parents and siblings? Was there any other musical talent in the family?
No, there wasn't. I apparently, I'm told, used to do things like follow brass bands at 3 years old along with things. So there must have been some sort of musical thing there, but not within the family. Anyway, they recognised that there was some sort of desire. And my first lessons, they sent me to Lutapano to learn piano accordion.
Lutapano?
Yeah. And so they were my first lessons.
So what age were you when you started on the accordion?
Oh, I think about 7.
7,
yeah.
Right. Okay. So lessons once a week and all that sort of thing?
From what I remember, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Well then, how did you make the transition into piano?
Well, that happened after I was already just at Caulfield, and what happened was that I was riding home on my bike from a football game I was playing in, and went over the top of the handlebars and landed on my teeth and broke a few off, which caused all sorts of many visits to the dentist. But as a result of that, my parents bought me a piano from the orchestral company, and it all followed from that.
Oh, okay. Well, it was good. Well, I noticed just doing some research about it that you were involved with Swallows Juniors.
Yes, I was for a short while. It became a bit of a conflict with the church because of weddings on a Saturday afternoon, and that's when they rehearsed it and all that sort of stuff. But it did go for a few months. Ended when they wanted me to take dancing lessons, and Dad just wouldn't be in that. So that, yeah.
So what did you do on? What instrument did you play on Swallows Juniors?
No, that was all singing.
It was all singing?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, how come we haven't heard you singing on jazz events?
Used to do it a lot. I used to sing a lot in latter years. We'll go into that later. And I did a lot of restaurant work, trio work in restaurants, and a lot of singing there. But I had a great voice when I was a kid. I've still got tapes, but didn't happen after my voice broke. I don't think I got the greatest voice in the world. I mean, I can carry a tune, but that's about all.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that was really good. Now, So, where did you get your first contact with jazz musicians? How did that come about?
All right. As you would be aware, and you're probably around yourself certainly were, the 60s jazz was very popular. There was a boom in it, traditional jazz boom.
Yes.
So I became very interested in all that when I was about 12 and actually did my first gig in a church hall in Finch Street, East Malvern, at the age of 13 with other guys from school. Go back on school for a minute. But anyway, from there I started doing things like going to Memphis Jazz Club, places like that. And I ended up playing in a rehearsal band that was in St George's Hall in Malvern, and I used to play in a rehearsal band at East Malvern on a Saturday afternoon. Very young, but the people involved were, I can't remember all of them, but you'd know the ones I can remember were Peter Stagg on cornet, Steve Miller on trombone, and Don Standing on banjo.
Right.
And that was I didn't even know my chords properly. I remember sort of A major, E flat. What's that? At that time, but it was good, you know. And through that, I used to go to that dance on the Saturday night and other ones, of course.
Yes.
But got to know the guys in the trainer band fairly well.
Yes.
And,
yeah, well, we'll talk about those and we'll come on to those. I had you I've got you in our records here of the 1965 20th Jazz Convention in Sydney.
Yep.
And you with a group called Russell's Friends. Now, who was Russell that had the Friends?
Russell Weil was a clarinet player who died. That band was pretty much the Onions with a couple of changes.
Yeah.
Mike Edwards was on second cornet, I think, in that.
Yeah, and there's Billy Howard and Brett.
Yep.
And a guy called Alan Mittelman on
Alan Mittelman
banjo.
is. Yeah. There's another story involving Alan Mittelman. I'm moving to the side. Convention was. I don't think it's even listed in the program because I've never been able to find it. But around about that time, we did this band whose name I can't even remember, but it was fun. It was Alan Mittelman, Mike Edwards, who now played trumpet and now plays reeds, and myself all on guitars, and Hamish Hughes on bass from the John Hawes band. And we just played like 6 and 7/8 string band stuff. That was when I played guitar, which was years ago now. Yeah. And that was fun. But Alan Mittelman was a very, very well-known artist, painter up in Sydney. Yeah.
So how did you get up to? Was that sort of the first sort of jazz thing that you a big festival that you went to?
No, the first festival I went to was the '63 Melbourne one. I can't remember what I played, if I played and who I played with, but I remember being there.
Yeah. Yes.
That was at Kew Town Hall.
Yeah, I think that was
And
good.
then
The other one I noticed about is that you played with the Frank Turville band at the Heritage Club in about '66.
yeah, that was after. That was sort of. Actually, that was probably my favourite band in a lot of ways. Of the traditional bands that I've played in, I think that was probably my favourite. That was Frank Turville on trumpet, and
Dennis Ball.
Dennis Ball on clarinet. I'm trying to think of the trombone players now. Very good. Charlie Powell.
Charlie Powell,
and
that's
was,
right, yes. Glyn Walton on banjo.
Glyn Walton from Adelaide on banjo. Mel McGilvray on drums.
Yeah,
Don Heap on bass.
Yeah. What a fantastic lineup.
Yeah, it was a great band.
Yeah. So whereabouts was the Heritage Club?
The Heritage Club was at the Continental Hotel, which I think is in Latrobe Street.
Right. Yep.
Or Lonsdale, one or the other.
Yeah. Okay. Good.
But,
so just going back a little bit, did you actually, you've got a prodigious knowledge of chords and things now. Did you have some formal piano training?
I did with Norm up to a point, but it all transpired as a bit of I know I'm sort of going off topic a bit, but there's a reason for that. In this case, I was working full time up until '71, and there was a week that happened, and I was working for a car company, and that was like 5 days a week, and it happened that one day they came up and said, "We want you to come in on Saturday afternoon and do a stock take." And I said, "I can't, I'm working." "Well, you're working here." I said, "Well, you know." So, I went home and did the sums, and at that stage, I think as an assistant accountant, I think I was making about $60 a week. This is in 71, of course, a long time ago. I think I was making about 180 out of music, so I told them to stick their job, basically, and turned pro at that point, yeah.
Right, yeah.
And, sorry, what was the question you asked? I know
The question was about formal piano training.
Right, yeah. So I realised that having turned pro, I wasn't going to be able to exist on jazz. So I went to a lovely lady named Marnie Hall, who's a wonderful accompanist here in Melbourne, and sort of tidied up a lot of piano things that way with Marnie for some months. She was great. She's dead now, of course, but she was lovely and a wonderful piano player, very underrated piano player. Yeah. And yeah, but Marnie could play anything. Anything.
Yes.
And yeah, she helped a lot in that. So yes, that got the chops going a bit.
Great. Now, along comes the famous Frank Trainer Band, 1967.
There was a band before that.
But the one before that? Yep.
I played.
But that's where you came into it about there, wasn't it?
No, I was in a band called Snight Chambers Bayside Jazz Band before that.
Right.
With Alan Chambers on trumpet, Dave Rankin, Dave Robinson on clarinet, I think Bordy on drums, can't remember who was on bass, and John Kavanagh on banjo. And I was with that for a while, and then came the Trainer Band.
Right, yeah. Okay. Right.
I had taken lessons off Frank for a while on piano.
Yeah.
And we knew each other pretty well. And what happened was Coyley, who, by the way, was my initial god.
Yes.
Graham Coyle was amazing. And Coyley left, and they got a guy in who was a real nice piano player named Verdon Morecambe. And Verdon did it for a while, and then I came in to the Trainer Band, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is the Trainer Band. To put it in perspective, this is the Trainer Band pre-Gordian and Mike Longhurst and all that,
Yes,
This is before that.
Yes. So that had the people like Rod Thompson, Freddie Parks.
Only ever recorded with Fred with that band.
Yeah.
When I first joined the Trainer Band, it was pretty much, with the exception of drums and piano, the same as what the Memphis Band was, which was Roger, Ade, Frank, Les Davis, Rob Williamson, myself and Bordy. That changed fairly shortly after that to what you're going to read out now with either Dick Tatum or Rod Thompson.
Yeah,
And Frank and various clarinet players like Jimmy Luffman and Barry Ratton did some gigs with us. Yep. Usually there was a lot of work for the Trainer Band at that time. Frank and Jim Beale, who was the drummer, were very, very good at arranging gigs, and we'd be working a lot, including daytime doing schools things.
Yeah.
Where I first got to know a great mate, Alex Hutchinson, who, well, when we go back to the drinking thing, we'll talk about that. Yeah.
So what was Frank like as a person?
Frank had a harsh side, but he had a heart of gold. He really did. He was a really lovely man. Not necessarily on the bandstand, but he's a lovely man there too. But he did run a tight ship. Thank God for that.
He was unforgiving about people who he maintained a very high standard.
He maintained a high standard, but he did. I'll give you an instance of that involving me. He knew your limitations, and he was good at it. When I first, after it became that band with Rod Thompson and Dick Tatum and all that sort of thing, I used to do a fair bit of singing with the band, right? Well, when I say a fair bit, maybe 3-4 songs a night. Couldn't play and sing at the same time. So I used to go to the front, stand at the mic, and Frank would go on the piano. And except that it wasn't that long, it was just for a few weeks, and then somehow or other, like that, I just could play and sing at the same time. And obviously I was trying,
Yes.
But it just happened that I could. You know.
Yes.
Anyway, I don't sing much anymore. But Frank, that's sort of an illustration of Frank's tolerance.
Yes.
He's pretty. He could be tolerant. He knew what he wanted,
Yes.
and a very good band leader.
Yes. I've never thought about the idea that having an extra little compartment of the brain that's doing the piano playing, and then you got to superimpose another set of lyrics and sing things on top of it.
He used to do a gig. I went to a gig that he was doing once. I think it was the Tower Hotel in Hawthorne, and he was playing piano with Aid playing saxes and Jim Beale playing drums, just as a trio thing. And he actually acquitted himself rather well, from what I remember. Yeah.
Yes. Oh, that's fantastic. Now, along the way, when I was doing research, I came across a whole lot of football club songs.
Yep.
How did that come about? What was?
The Herald wanted to do a series of songs, and they would have approached Frank and Jim, and we basically went into 3DB and recorded them. I think on each one there's four different tracks.
Yes.
And this is for all the, as it were, then 12 clubs. Wish we could go back there. And one of the tracks was just the band playing. Another one was me doing it as a piano trio, doing the songs. I think the fourth track was Don Kinsey or somebody talking about the clubs or something like that. And then the main track was the band doing the song and Graham Fitzgibbon singing, Smacker, singing the lead on it, yeah. And they were all recorded at 3DB Studios in Melbourne.
Right. Yeah. So that was in the 60s.
Yeah, sometime in the 60s.
Yeah. That's quite. They would be classics, and of course none of the football players know how to sing any of their songs anyway. You could be musical director for.
Well, some of them have changed. I mean, like St Kilda wasn't when the Saints go marching in then. No. You know, it was. We do like to be beside the seaside, I think, or something like that.
Yeah, very good there. Now, I came across a little group called the Ragtime 4, 1968, with you and Felix Blatt on banjo.
Yeah.
John
Healy from Perth now on bass, and
John Pridham.
John Pridham, who I would love to. John's still around, but John was one of the people who got called up, and that when we were all 20 and we're up for the call up, and he went to Vietnam and all that, and I haven't seen John since. He's a good drummer, and he played washboard in that band. That band initiated basically just to, I don't know, I guess like a lot of the jazz bands did at the time, just to go on Kevin Dennis New Faces and see how you went. Yeah. Well, I don't think we won anything, but we ended up with a lot of IMTs out of it.
Yeah.
That's in Melbourne tonight for people who are younger.
So, where did you get the arrangements for the songs for that?
I did them.
You did them.
Yeah.
So how did you learn to do that?
Just using my ears. I could always write music fairly fast, you know. So they were all done like that.
So are you one of these lucky people that's got perfect pitch?
No.
You haven't?
No.
But
good relative pitch. Give me a note and I'll...
Yeah.
And then play another one. I'll tell you what it is, but that's relative pitch. But no, not perfect pitch. No, thank God.
So what sort of music did that Ragtime 4 play?
Well, we played ragtime things, but the Ron Tudor from W&G asked us if we'd sort of do ragtime versions of Australian songs, so that's what we did.
Right.
God, that's a long time ago, mate.
Yeah, indeed. Yeah, well, I think your memory is really, really fantastic. Now, coming along into the next little thing that I noted down was you did some sessions in the 70s, 74 with Margaret Road Night, just the two of you?
That was an album that was called The Blues Singers, I think.
Yes.
It had Margaret Road Night on one side and Dutch Tildas on the other side.
Right.
Just recently I found the chords for that Margaret had written out, and I gave them to Maggie. Did you bring them in here? Yeah, cool. Yeah, and that was.
So Margaret was just vocals, or did she
Yeah, no, she was vocal and playing guitar, of course.
playing guitar, and then you were the piano, just the two of you?
On a couple of the things. There was a guy named Peter Howell, I think, was playing bass. I can't remember anything else. I haven't played the record in years.
Yeah.
We did do some of those songs when Jeff Tobin and I put on a trainer night a couple of years ago at East Malvern, and Margaret came and sang, and we did two of the songs that are on that album. Shipwreck Blues was one, I can't remember the other. But yeah, that was an album. That was during the time that I think I'd left the trainer band at that stage. I left the trainer band to join a very, very old mate of mine, and we'd been doing a gig with Ken Batcher, who's a very old mate of mine who lives up in Pambula near Merimbula, who's a drummer, and we had this gig at the, I think it was a Saturday night at the Duke of Kent Hotel in the city, and it was called the Ed Robbins Trio.
Yes.
And it was Ed Robbins on clarinet, Ken on drums, and myself on piano. And that sort of started a long run of things that I did with Ken. And the one that I was talking about is we took on a job with Ken and as the house band at the Croxton Park Hotel, which was they're all jazz players, but we were playing a lot of Tijuana brass and rock stuff and all that. It was myself on piano, Ken on drums, Barry Hanley on trumpet and vocals, and Ken Sluice, bass player from the Hot Sands band.
Yes. Yep.
On bass, and that was fun. So a long series of things every now and again with Ken then followed until finally we ended up with a band called Maximum Load, and we did the Riding Through the Dandenong Ranges thing and all that, and that was fun. But yeah, that was the start of all that.
Yeah. So the Barry Hanley one was eventually was the Riviera Jazz Band.
Eventually became the Riviera Jazz Band. Yeah. That was all I'd done with Barry at that time. There's a good story later on, and we'll talk about that. That basically involves me coming back to jazz. It involves Barry Hanley very strongly.
He was one of the ones that came you back.
No, what happened there was years down the track, long after the theatre thing and all that. My lady at the time, Marie, and I were down at Phillip Island, and we're sitting on the beach, and there's this sound of jazz, and I thought, oh, what's that? You know, and it must have been this festival on at the time, because I was totally disconnected with the jazz scene then. Anyhow, we goes up, and there's this band playing in the Continental Hotel, which included Barry Hanley, Kim Rushworth, guys that I knew, you know, and Kevin Simmons on drums. Hanley said, God, I haven't seen you for about 40 years. And I went, yeah, okay. What are you doing next week? I said, I don't know why. I'm working full time. So I was during, you know, I'll tell you about that later on. So much to tell. Anyway, that I started playing with Riviera then, and that was years and years before I sort of got back in the scene per se. But I used to do lots of gigs with Barry. Okay, good. All down in Gippsland.
Yep. Yeah. So tell me, this transition that you did where your principal full-time job was not in jazz, as you very rightly said, that you astutely worked out that you would never make a living out of it.
Okay.
When did all this happen?
Happened in the 70s. Probably to a large extent after I'd given away the alcohol. That was, I'll start with that because you said I could introduce that at my leisure. Playing a lot as I did, particularly in my late teens, with guys that I'm not blaming them by the way, but who were 30 and all that sort of thing, and I was 19 and I was trying to keep up with them. And anyway, the grog grabbed me and I got pretty bad, got to say. And eventually I was able to give up as a jazz connection here too. In 1973, 20th September 73, I was able to finally, after a couple of tries, give it up. And I got to give full credit to two musicians there who helped me unbelievably and saved my life really, which were Alex Hutchinson and Alan Brown.
Yep.
and they were so supportive at that time. And fortunately, it's now, what is it, nearly 52 years.
Yep.
And I don't think I'd be here.
No,
You know,
you
were not-
wouldn't
not
be
for that.
if you'd continued.
But
on
anyway,
that.
after that, I sort of I gave it up, and I got really helter-skelter interested in music. And it was the early days of this weird instrument called a synthesizer.
Yes.
I paid out a lot of money at the time, $4,500 for an ARP 2600 synthesizer, and got really into that, and that ended up causing the first job that I got in the theatre, because there were very few people in point of fact, at least in the scene that I knew, outside of the universities, there were two people in Melbourne. One was a very good jazz player named David Evans, a modern player, and myself had synthesizers. And a show came up called The Whiz. This is in the mid-70s, and that involved a synthesizer part. No, it involved Rhodes piano and Hammond organ and synth. So I got rung up to do that. And that sort of kept me in theatre for a little while. Then I broke off in the middle and did a degree at La Trobe and in music, and then went back to theatre. And that lasted a long time.
So just tease out a little bit more about your course at La Trobe.
La Trobe had a music degree then. They actively chased musicians to do it as mature age students, and there's people like a good mate of mine who's an excellent piano player at Steve Ball up in Sydney, Barry Veith.
Yes.
A few others, can't remember, but that was in 77, 78, 79.
Yeah. So did that change your approach to music after you did that degree?
Not in terms of professional playing, but certainly in terms of listening, because I understood it was basically a harmony and theory and composition degrees.
Yeah.
A degree and involved a lot of harmony and tonal harmony, all that sort of stuff, and a lot of 12-tone stuff. And it sort of changed the way I listen to music, and to that end, yes, you know.
Did you have involvement with classical music as part of that course?
Oh yeah. Yes, much of that. The only problem I ever had at uni, I was sort of got asked to play a bit more than what I would have liked to in lectures when they wanted to illustrate something and all that. I wasn't keen on doing that in front of all these young kids that were. I mean, I was 30 and there was all these 19-year-olds doing a degree.
Yes. When you gave up drinking,
Yep.
and all that, did you manage to get out and do any solo work at all on the piano?
That was happening at the time that I gave it up. I'd been mainly, I think, doing some band gigs, but due to the money, I guess, I was doing a lot of solo work for a group at that time existed named Federal Hotels.
Yes.
So I was working in the hotels in the city like Menzies Tavern at the time, and also at the time I gave away alcohol. I was working at the, what's the name of that? Mentone Hotel, I think it's called. Yeah, and that was it. I was 3 weeks in Delmont, and where Alan Brown had organised for me to go to give it up, and they held the job for me, and I went back there against a lot of people's advice, who said, "No, don't go back there. They'll just buy you drinks all the time." And actually, that builds strength. The saying no thing, you know.
Yes, because there you are.
Yeah.
You're playing piano in an environment where there's alcohol all around.
Yeah, there's alcohol and people trying to buy you drinks to play them tunes and all that.
Yes.
And it was good to be able to say no and mean it.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you have all these tunes in the top of your head?
Yep.
Right.
Oh, I mean, I had books too.
Yes, you had chart books. But
Chart books,
able to do it. So how many years did that go on for?
Probably a few months after that.
Yeah.
I guess what year are we talking? 73.
Yeah.
from that time on, I sort of started doing a lot of trio work in restaurants, and I worked at in a very. I think the first one I did in the early 70s, we had a band 6 nights a week at the Walsingham Tiller Hotel. It was a great little trio. It was bloke who's had a lot to do with the jazz club in Perth, Gary Howard. And Gary was from a rock band called the Mixtures, and Rick Berger was the bass player, and Rick had been playing in this wonderful band called Cycle, which was great. And at that time also I'd been playing in a band called, I think it was called Division 5 or something, with John Hawes, Ken Vatcher, John Leon, alto, John Grundon, who was a bass player I played for, a great jazz player for years, and we were doing 6 nights at the Sandringham Hotel. But anyway, that went on to something else.
Was it sort of just cocktail hour music?
No. It was full on sort of like jazz fusion, not jazz, early, sort of like, what was the band? David Clayton Thomas and all that sort of stuff.
Yep.
Yeah. But, like no guitars.
No guitars.
But, no, I loved it because I was playing Hammond on it. I still love playing Hammond.
Yeah.
When I can, don't very often.
You like the extras. Well, now tell us a little bit about your career in how you got into the theatre.
Well, how I got into the theatre, as I said before, was that synth connection thing to do the Whiz.
Whiz, yep.
Which was a sort of a funk show long before its time. The theatre version had great charts. The film version, not so. Sorry, Quincy, not good. They were much better charts in the. Had an absolute demon of an electric bass part. Another jazz player by the name of John Allen played that on electric bass. Yeah, so that went on, and after that I can't remember the next show I did, but the show after that I was going to do was a chorus line, and I was sort of booked for it, but I decided for some unknown reason, I decided the uni degree was important, which it sort of wasn't in a way. But anyway, I didn't do that because I went to the uni, and right on the end of the time at La Trobe, I had a ring to do this show that was going to run for 20 months on the tour called Evita. And Evita, and that sort of set me up a bit in that game, and it created some really long-lasting friendships. My best mate is still the other, if you like, the other keyboard player in. I played synth in Evita. Spud Murphy, my old mate from Sydney, Stephen Murphy, played piano, and Peter Casey conducted. And these are people who are dear friends, to this day. After Evita went for quite a while. After that, I did the first and only time I've done a show that actually had a piano section. We had 2 pianos, and that was a show called Barnum, which is about, I don't know if people remember, it was a good show. It was a circus show. And after that, the lead in that asked me to play with him in a show. Reg Livermore asked me to play with him and Spud, a few other guys, doing a show called Firing Squad, which was great. Everything led on to everything else. And then I think after before Firing Squad, I'd moved to Sydney, and that meant that I had to change over from the Melbourne Union, which existed at the time, to the Sydney Union. And in a lot of ways, that was a really good thing, because it gave me a lot of. When the shows weren't happening, there was sometimes blocks of months when the show wasn't happening, and they used to throw my way tours with international acts.
Yes.
And I'd be doing tours with guys like Matt Munro, and I think a total of 6 tours starting in 1984 with Valdunica, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah.
The musos were fantastic.
Yeah.
86, there was another one through the Sydney Union, which was an Australian tour with Peter Allen,
Yep.
and that was brilliant. It was a challenge playing with the rest of the rhythm section were all New York guys, and it was a bit of a problem. I was playing mainly strings on that, on synth. And they'd pick up brass, and the brass section in Melbourne was Bob Venier, Peter Salton, Keith, trombone player. Anyway, brilliant brass section. So yeah, that was a good tour too. But anyway, through the Sydney Union, I picked up a lot of that sort of stuff, and then I came back to Melbourne. I was doing more restaurant stuff because it was well paying. I was working for John Cordham, who had a series of hotels around Melbourne. And anyway, I got asked to do this show that was coming to Melbourne, that had done Sydney and been very successful, and was coming to Melbourne, called Cats.
Yes.
Well, I ended up doing 1,670 shows of Cats.
That's a lot of shows. Yeah.
I think we could say that would be Melbourne twice, Adelaide twice, Perth twice, Newcastle, Brisbane, Auckland. Yeah, and then later on touring to Hong Kong and Singapore and Seoul in Korea and all that sort of stuff. So,
right. Did you who did you play for in Korea?
Cats.
Cats
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
And I think somewhere or other you got to play for the US troops at one stage.
Yeah, in Korea we did a trip up, which wasn't not a long trip. You're only talking about 70k or something, Melbourne to Geelong sort of distance,
up to the
border. And yeah, I music directed that. It was fun because I was on one keyboard and I had the guy, Peter Casey, the guy who was conducting Cats, on another keyboard. So I was his boss that day. But yeah, and we did, what that was just a number of the cast of Cats came up, and we weren't doing Cats. They were just doing songs that they picked and all that sort of thing. It was good. Anyway, they gave me a medal. Still got it at home.
I remember. So how did you get involved with the television networks?
Oh, right. That was during that living in Sydney time. And the music director was, as I say, my great mate, Steve Murphy, Spud Murphy. And Spud asked me to do some stuff on in the television band at Channel 10 in Sydney. So that went for a little while and it was fun.
Yeah.
And
it must have been quite something, because all those In Day to Night and all those things, it all went to air live, didn't it?
It did. It was all live, yeah.
Yeah. They used to make a virtue out of things that went wrong, didn't they?
I think one of the things you learn when you stuff up is how to cover it. When I was very young, I'll never forget it. I was talking to a wonderful Australian musician, alto player and music director named Frank Smith, who was the teacher of Graham Lyle. And it was at the Embers when I was only a kid, and he was talking about making mistakes, and he said, I'll never forget, he said, try and play around it. If you're improvising and you make a blue, try and play around it. If that doesn't work, repeat it, and everybody will think you meant it. And if both of those things fail, glare at the guitar player.
Oh, that's very funny. Describe what it's like. I'm trying to get a picture of being part of a big theatre orchestra, down in...
Right, there's two parts to all this, to doing that. One is that in theatre, now I don't know what happens now, because it's been a while since I've been actively involved in that sort of thing. But at that stage, you'd get a minimum of, say, anywhere between 8 to 12 band rehearsals. That's a lot.
Yeah.
So by the time you got to do it with the show, got to do what's called a sitz probe, which is a room something like this, with the band all with music stands and the cast all over them. The first time they get to sing through with the orchestra.
Yeah.
So, yes, there's a lot of preparation, and that's a good thing, or it was a good thing. The other side, I was playing keyboards or piano in shows, and the other side of that is that when you play piano in a show, you're also somehow or other managed to become the rehearsal pianist or one of the rehearsal pianists as well, which means a lot of the days you're in there at 10 o'clock in the morning and finished when the show finishes at night.
Yeah.
So it's a piano player works pretty hard when you're doing
Yeah.
the show, because you do a lot. There's always a lot. After a show starts running, people think, oh, that's the end of it. No, there's understudy calls nearly every day, vocal calls, dance calls, all that still keep going.
Yes.
And so they need somebody to play for those.
Yeah.
And
But it must give you must be a tremendous feeling to be part of creating just a wonderful full orchestral feeling. That.
Yeah, and it was great. I mean, I for instance, it's the people you work with. Like I did 3 shows of, is it 3 or 4? I don't know. Anyway, at least Evita, Aspects of Love, and Cats, all written by Andrew Lloyd Webber. And on each of those shows, I worked with Andrew, and that was something of an experience.
Yeah.
He's a very, very talented lad.
Yeah.
Let me say, lad, he's my age. But that was good. And it is the ensemble thing. One thing I'll mention about the shows, there was a time we were in Singapore with Cats, and we used to have a great time going out and blowing with the local jazz people, most of whom were Americans, I've got to say. It was me and a bloody lovely trumpet player named Dave Newdick, and we'd go out and just have a hit with the locals. Really good, because they were better players than we were.
Yeah.
Well, perhaps not David, but they were better players than I were.
So what sort of venues would they?
Oh, I can't remember the name of the place. Mainly in Singapore, it was a place down at the Quay.
Yes.
And it was right on the water. And
so these were jazz
they were
venues.
jazz
You
venues,
just went and sat in.
Yeah, because they were still running well a couple of hours after the show finished.
Yeah.
Oh,
that's very good. So,
by the way, I also got to mention most of the shows, particularly Cats, but no, not Les Mis so much, but during all those runs of Cats, there was almost always after the show, because the band was backstage, and you could wear what you like, which was lovely.
Yep.
But almost every night we'd have a blow after the show and playing jazz stuff.
Yeah.
With the guys in the pit.
Yeah. So music's really been a huge influence on your life, hasn't it?
Oh yeah.
Now tell me, of the Australian and the overseas musicians that you've played with, who are the standout ones?
There's a bloke named Michael Holmes who played the piano part when necessary in the Peter Allen tour. He was one. The piano player and music director for Val Dunican was a guy named Roger Richards, who was just a monster player. Roger died a couple of years ago. They would be the standouts for me.
And
there's a lot of people. This is a funny thing about the jazz scene. There's a lot of people, even in Melbourne. There's a lot of people who are pretty much the best jazz players, who weren't always very seldom were doing jazz gigs. I mean, good. The guys in the 9 band were amazing players. Peter Martin on sax. I mean, you never see Peter Martin hardly ever on a jazz gig, but he played everybody off the bloody stand.
Yeah.
As a sax player. I mean, God.
Yeah. So that's really sort of a throwback to what was happening in, say, the dance bands of the 20s and 30s, that people were playing, music for people to dance to, but they were great jazz musicians as well, weren't they?
Yeah. Well, in the case of, say, in the case of the black bands, definitely they're all good jazz players. But I mean, in the case of the white bands like the Golkett, Whitemans, and all that, they as you know, imported players to do the solos and all that sort of thing, like Bix and Frank Trumbo and people like that.
Yeah. So, Of the people that you played with, you talked about Graham Coyle being on piano being one of your heroes. Who are your other heroes on the piano?
Oscar Peterson, number one. Tatum, Waller.
Yeah.
One that probably goes a little unnoticed because of the amount of work he did in music generally is Andre Previn.
Yes.
Most definitely
Yes.
somebody who I like listening to. But, you know, I mean, there's so many players, you know,
Yes.
them all, you know. But
Yes,
certainly I've got to give Oscar, I'd certainly ripped a bit off Oscar.
Yes.
So
Do you think you've incorporated any of the things that you learned from them into your own playing, maybe?
Yeah, you do, but you don't do it consciously.
Yeah,
You do. But occasionally I've noticed if people record a gig and you hear it and you go, oh, shit, that's an Oscar rip-off, you know?
Yeah.
Things like that, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, you don't want to do it, but you do it.
Yes,
It's unavoidable,
yeah, that's right.
you know?
You listen to people, don't you?
Yeah.
It's certainly like, you know, people like Graham Coyle had such a distinctive style, didn't he? You could hear, you know, four bars and you'd know it was Graham Coyle.
Yeah.
You know,
but
he had a particular run that he...
Yeah, but he's also, Graham was also pretty versatile, you know, in the same way as today. I mean, you know, I regard myself as an okay player, but we've got players in this town, like Stephen Grant is just unbelievable, you know. I mean, that's why, one of the reasons we go, I mean, one of the pleasures of my life and Maggie's is going down the Emerald and just hearing what's got to be just world-class music.
Yes.
You know, every time.
Yes,
you know?
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it's certainly, but we're very fortunate in Melbourne. Tell me a little bit about how you got back into jazz. When did
well, that happened because at the time I'd sort of slowed down a bit on the theatre thing, and I did get offers, and I had taken on part-time as far back as 96, working with a couple of mates named Ian and Leanne White, who started at that time a performing arts school called Centre Stage. And bit by bit, when it came to be late 90s, up until the time I retired from there in 2013, I was musical director at Centre Stage, and that was basically a full-time job. So the only playing in jazz, I did a little bit of playing during it. I mean, Guy Simpson talked me into doing this show called They're Playing Our Song for the production company, but that was about all. I was mainly working at Centre Stage, and then during that Centre Stage, early in that Centre Stage period, came that being on the beach hearing Barry Handley, and so yeah. After that, I played around a little bit, but not a lot. And there's a time I nearly gave up. There's 3 times I nearly gave up, but because I just got sick of music, you know, which happens sometimes. But it all came back to the I guess the presence, the small presence I have now. Basically, you know, I'd been doing a few different things, a lot of accompanying cabaret stuff and all that, but then my partner at the time got very, very ill with MND, and there was a break there of a couple of years where I didn't do anything else but care for her.
Yes.
After that, after Marie died, I sort of went into myself and didn't do anything for a few weeks, and one day I decided to, I'd heard about this gig at the Clyde.
Yes.
So I went in there, I walked in, there was 2 people in the place I knew. One was Graham Davies, the other one was Peter Gray.
Yes.
And I don't know, it sort of stoked my interest and I got involved there. So, you know, since then it's been playing gigs with different people, a lot of gigs with Barry Handley, some with just about everybody from time to time, but I decided to sort of put it back into it. So I spent a couple of years as on the committee of the VJC. And then
Yep.
after we left that, the last 3 years I've been secretary of the Australian Jazz Convention.
Yes,
And that
you
sort of-
certainly have. Yep.
That's giving things back a bit and playing whatever I do. And Jeff Tobin and myself put on things at the East Melbourne RSL,
Yes, you're the musical director there.
and that keeps me going. You know.
Right, it's good. And your involvement with the AJC, that seems to have been a particularly rewarding experience.
It is, and the lovely Maggie over there is also involved in that committee. It was a hard year. Longford was a hard year. Last year, not quite so hard, but there's a lot of work goes into it.
Yes. Do you think it's such a unique event, that, isn't it?
It is. You know, I'd like to see it go to the 80th at the very least. You know,
Yes.
we're on what's next year, 78th.
Yes.
Interest in the music is we've got to face facts, is dropping back. I'd like to see a resurgence, and that's one way I see of getting that. The last convention was a great time. I loved playing with John Eric and all that. That was fantastic. And,
Yes, he was a wonderful ambassador for the instrument, wasn't he?
he was great,
Yes,
and he just did it so professionally. And
Do you? The problem is that jazz in 2025, when we're recording this, is very much a niche
Yep.
musical thing there, and it's probably going to stay that way. You can't see it resurging. Maybe, do you think?
I think it's up to the young. You know, if groups of young people become interested in the music, then it will.
Yeah.
You know, it's difficult. There's not big crowds, but yeah, sometimes. I mean, we've got pretty good crowds, for instance, at East Melbourne. You know,
Yes.
and but then again, it's pretty much, we've got to say, the older generation.
Yes.
You know,
Yes.
I'd love to see some youngies getting. I love it when I go on YouTube and see Tuba Skinny playing in Europe or somewhere, and there's all these kids around digging it, and I think,
Yes.
why not here?
Yes.
You know?
Yes, exactly. Going back a little while, in Ray Price in Sydney spent a lot of time going around to schools
Yep.
talking about jazz. Do you think that? How do you think that would go these days?
Well, we
that?
used to do that with Frank, with Trainer,
Yeah.
back in the 70s, and you know, I think the kids used to go. A lot of kids used to go to it, and they'd pay something, and I think there was to get out of lessons, but you know, they were fun. And Trainer introducing kids to the drums and saying, and this is a Tom Tom, and that's a Dick, and that's a Harry, you know, and all that sort of things, and the kids laughing. But it's a way to do it. Yeah, if it could be done, it's a good way to do it.
So, when you look at the fairly flourishing improvisation courses at Melbourne University through the Performing Arts, the College of the Arts, and out at Monash.
Yep.
Have you had any interaction with any of
Not really.
the graduates of those ones?
Not really. No. Oh, well, I don't know. I could have.
You could have.
I could have. I don't know, because people don't come onto a gig and say, I'm a graduate of Melbourne University Jazz course. But I'd like to see. What was that bloke's name in Newcastle? Adam. Oh, he's one of the guys involved with that magazine.
Dingo.
Dingo, yeah. I can't remember his second name, but he started coming. He's a straight out modern player, and he came to the convention, started playing with some of the more Adam Simmons, more traddy bands, and sort of slotted in like that. I think a lot of the future, I'm not talking necessarily traditional here, but I think in general with jazz, I hate making pronouncements, but I think you talk about the courses and that. a lot of the people that come out of the courses, I do a lot of listening, as you know. Maggie and I like to go to gigs. A lot of the guys sound the same, you know, coming out of the things. But so I think that if we could get, whether it be modern or traditional or whatever, I think the secret is doing gigs. You learn more that way than any other.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Yeah, that's it. And hopefully, even if they're small, the jazz gigs, whether they be modern or mainstream or traditional or anything, if they keep going, then you're going to have a large school of people carrying the music on.
Yeah. Well, the fact that places like the Jazz Lab and the Melbourne Jazz Cooperative, on very limited resources, seem to be, well attended.
Yep.
You know, people go, that's so right. It's good. Why do you think it is that there's so much more music here in Melbourne than say in Sydney?
No idea. But having lived in both towns, the jazz scene down here, I think you could say has always been stronger.
Yes.
Even allowing for the presence in Sydney of people like Bob.
Yes.
Bob Bernard but there were I think even in the 60s, like traditional jazz boom, there was more bands in Melbourne.
Yes.
More dancers, more of this and more of that. And I think I think it sort of wormed its way more into the psyche down here.
Yes.
Don't know any other reason.
Yes. Because it's certainly the case. One of the questions that I've been asking people about is that, do you think there's an Australian sound in traditional jazz?
Yes, I do, but it's a difficult question, and you'd probably have a lot of the New Orleans people knocking me on the head. Now, I have profound respect for New Orleans music. I loved the Yarras, Hot Sands, and all that. But to me, the Australian jazz sound is, I don't know, it's on its own, but if you go from the bell band onwards, and certainly Trainer and all that, I just think you'd have to say it was a two-beat thing, somewhat in a way akin to the Lou Waters band and that sort of thing.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, that wasn't the first jazz record I owned. It was the first jazz record I bought was Lou Waters, which is strange. But my parents had bought me Time Out by Dave Brubeck, and I didn't like it at the time. Grew to absolutely love it because I love Paul Desmond. But so it's sort of that's going to offend a lot of people saying that, and it's hard to pick it. But there is that element, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Do you think maybe it's because so many of the people who started out, people like Aid and all those, that they didn't really have a lot of formal training. They just picked it up from records. It's a more casual, less structured sort of jazz that they're playing?
No, yes, I think there's certainly that element to it, and I think that element applies well beyond the bell band and all that, because don't forget there was no, when I started playing, when other people started playing, like Alan Brown, Brett, all that, there was no jazz courses.
Yes.
We had to learn by listening to records. There was no other way, and that was the unsung heroes in a lot of ways of that time, of the Tony Standishes of the world, and that who kept bringing in records, and even earlier and people making records here and all that sort of thing. But certainly the influences were. Yeah.
Well, when you look at the efforts made by people like Bill Miller with the Ampersand,
absolutely.
If he hadn't recorded all those tracks there, they would never have existed. None of the overseas companies would have done them, and even people like, say, Bob Clemens with his jazz art one there, he was recording 48 to 52, and nobody else was very interested in Australian jazz recordings at all.
Well, no, and later on Bill Horton.
Yes.
Yes. And all those people. Yeah.
It's interesting.
And Ron Halstead did a lot of recording too, didn't he?
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's
and Bordy.
Yeah. Well, I think we've covered probably most of the highlights of what's been, to me, an absolutely amazing life in music, Peter.
Oh,
And
thanks, Mel.
it's terrific.
As they say, you got to make a living.
But I think it's just really nice to be able to encapsulate that you've had a career that's sort of gone on, for decades and decades. You know, music has really been your life, hasn't it?
It has.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
it's
very much so.
really great. Well, we'll finish up, and I'll thank you very much for your time here today. And I'm going to ask you, so we can have it as the finish of this recording, to watch you play on the piano, something that we'll leave you to choose.
Okay, I'm happy to do that.
Yeah, so thanks very much.
No worries. Thanks so much,
Terrific.
Mel.
Lovely.
Thank you.